Hello, my dear friends. This is Grandpa Billy, and I'm so happy to share a new story with you. If you enjoy what I do, please support me with a like and a subscription. Your support is my greatest inspiration. And now, let's begin. Nathan looked at Emma from across the sterile room, his heart racing even though they were far apart. "I don't care," he whispered, barely audible. "I'd rather die with you than live without you." Emma's eyes welled up with tears, her voice trembling as she replied, "But we can't. We can't be together. Not like this." The cold, metallic beep of the monitor filled the silence, reminding them of the impossible reality they now faced. Emma sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, her fingers tracing invisible lines on the blanket. "How did it come to this?" she whispered, her voice full of pain. Nathan stood a few feet away, clenching his fists, the weight of the chipping system on their lives unbearable. "We fight," he said, his tone hardening. "We find a way to break free. They can't control us." He took a step forward, but the barrier between them pulsed with an ominous hum, keeping them apart. Nathan turned away, the anger in his chest bubbling up. "They think they can control us. They think they can break us," he muttered. Emma looked up at him, her heart aching. "But we're already broken," she whispered. "You know what this means, right? We'll never be able to touch again, to hold each other." Her voice faltered, tears welling up in her eyes. Nathan's face softened for a moment, the pain in his own eyes matching hers, but he refused to give in. Hours passed in silence, the weight of the chipping system heavy on their shoulders. Emma broke the silence, her voice barely audible. "What if they come for us? What if they force us to—" She couldn't finish the thought. Nathan walked over to her, stopping just short of the barrier. "We won't let them," he said firmly, his hand almost touching the air between them. "We'll fight until the end, Emma. You're not losing me." His voice was raw, filled with desperation. The sound of footsteps echoed outside the room. Nathan's heart skipped a beat. "They're coming," he whispered, his voice urgent. Emma's breath hitched, her hands trembling. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice filled with fear. Nathan turned to her, his eyes fierce with determination. "We stay strong. We don't let them take us." His voice cracked slightly, but he stood tall. The footsteps grew louder. He took a step closer to the barrier, as if daring it to stop him. The door creaked open, and two figures entered the room. Emma's heart raced as she instinctively moved back, the invisible barrier keeping them apart. One of the figures, a tall man in a dark uniform, sneered at them. "Don't think you can escape," he said coldly, his voice dripping with disdain. Nathan's eyes flashed with anger, but he didn't flinch. "You can't control us," he said, his voice low but firm. The man smirked, stepping forward, testing the barrier. The man reached out, his fingers brushing the air just beyond the barrier, testing its strength. "You think this is your fight to win?" he sneered. Emma's voice trembled as she spoke. "We will find a way." Nathan shot her a look, his eyes filled with the fire of determination. "We don't need to fight them directly," he said, his mind racing. "We just need time. Time to plan. Time to be together." His words were soft but filled with a conviction as he looked at Emma, silently promising her freedom. The man finally withdrew his hand, his eyes narrowing in frustration. "Time is something you don't have," he warned, but Nathan was undeterred. "We have more time than you think," he said, his voice cold. The man looked at Emma, then back at Nathan, a hint of uncertainty crossing his features. He turned to leave, muttering under his breath, "We'll be watching you." As the door slammed shut, Nathan stepped closer to the barrier, his heart racing with the knowledge that their time was running out. The door clicked shut, and the room fell into an eerie silence. Emma let out a shaky breath, her shoulders slumping in exhaustion. "We're running out of options," she whispered, her voice full of dread. Nathan turned to her, his expression softening. "We've only just begun," he said quietly, reaching his hand out to the barrier as if hoping it would allow him to touch her. Emma met his gaze, her eyes filled with unspoken words, the distance between them painfully clear. Days passed in a blur of silence and uncertainty. Nathan and Emma spent hours talking through the barrier, their words filled with longing and fear. "I keep thinking about the day we were together before this," Emma said one evening, her voice soft. Nathan's expression darkened, the pain of their situation weighing on him. "I haven't forgotten," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I'll hold on to that memory, no matter what." They both knew the stakes were higher than ever, but their love was all they had left. Nathan paced back and forth, his mind racing with ideas. "We have to find a way out of here," he muttered to himself, frustration evident in his voice. Emma watched him, her heart aching, as she saw the stress take its toll on him. "Nathan, we're running out of time," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "We can't keep fighting forever." He stopped in his tracks, turning to her with fire in his eyes. "We won't stop. I promise you that." His words were filled with raw determination, but doubt still lingered in the air. Later that night, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thoughts swirling in her mind. "What if there's no way out?" she whispered to the empty room. Nathan, unable to sleep either, heard her soft words. He walked over to the barrier and knelt, his hand hovering just above it. "There's always a way," he said quietly, his voice full of quiet resolve. "As long as we're together, we'll find it." Emma's heart fluttered at his words, but fear still gnawed at her. The following morning, Emma sat by the window, looking out at the world that seemed so far away. "I remember when we used to walk together in the park," she said, her voice distant. Nathan stood by the door, his expression unreadable. "I remember," he replied softly, his voice thick with emotion. "But we'll have more memories, Emma. I won't let this be the end of us." Emma turned to him, her eyes filled with tears. "I just want to feel your touch again," she whispered, her voice breaking. Nathan paced back and forth again, his mind working on a plan. "There has to be a way to short-circuit the system," he said aloud, more to himself than Emma. She watched him from the bed, her heart heavy with doubt, but also a spark of hope. "Do you really think it's possible?" she asked, her voice trembling. Nathan stopped and looked at her, his eyes filled with unyielding resolve. "I have to believe it's possible," he said firmly. "For us, I have to." Emma nodded silently, the quiet strength in his words giving her courage. As the days passed, Nathan and Emma grew closer, despite the barrier between them. They talked about everything, their favorite memories, dreams of the future, and small everyday things. One night, Emma whispered, "What if we never get out of here? What if we're trapped like this forever?" Nathan's eyes softened, and he reached out, his fingers just inches from the barrier. "Then we'll make this place our own," he said quietly. "Even if we can't touch, we'll always have each other's hearts. One evening, as the sun set outside the window, Emma looked at Nathan, her heart aching with a mix of longing and love. I can't stop thinking about what it was like before, when everything was simple, she said quietly. Nathan smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. I remember, he replied softly. But we're not the same people we were then. We're stronger now. We've survived this. His voice cracked slightly, betraying the depth of his emotions, but he quickly regained his composure. And we'll keep surviving no matter what. The next morning, Nathan discovered something new, a faint glitch in the barrier. It flickered for a moment, and for a second he could almost reach through. His heart raced. "Emma, look!" he exclaimed. Emma rushed over, her eyes wide with disbelief. Is it weakening?" she asked, her voice filled with hope. Nathan stared at the glitch, his mind racing. "I think it might be, but we have to be careful. We don't know what will happen if we push it too far." As the days wore on, the glitch in the barrier became more frequent, but it was still unpredictable. Nathan and Emma spent every moment trying to figure out how to make it permanent. One evening, as they sat in silence, Emma looked at Nathan, her voice barely a whisper. "What if this is our only chance?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. Nathan turned to her, his eyes filled with determination. "Then we take it," he replied firmly. "We fight for what we want, Emma. For us." The following day, they made their move. Nathan approached the barrier cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. "Ready?" he asked, looking at Emma. She nodded, her eyes wide with fear, but also trust. With a deep breath, Nathan pressed his hand against the barrier, feeling the familiar pulse of energy, but this time it felt different, stronger. The glitch was larger, more persistent. "It's working," he whispered, his voice filled with awe and hope. "We're close, Emma. Just a little longer." The barrier flickered again, this time more violently. Nathan pulled his hand back, his heart racing. "It's getting unstable," he said, his voice filled with tension. Emma stepped closer, her face a mask of fear and determination. "We have to do this, Nathan," she urged, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can't keep living like this." Nathan nodded, his eyes locking with hers. "I know," he replied. "This is the only way." With a deep breath, he pressed his hand against the barrier once more, this time with all his strength. There was a sudden jolt. The barrier surged with light, and then nothing. The room fell into complete silence. Emma gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Did it work?" she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. Nathan stepped back, staring at the spot where the barrier once stood. The air felt different, lighter, freer. He reached out cautiously, his hand hovering, waiting for any sign. Then a spark of realization crossed his face. I think it's gone." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, cautiously, Nathan took a step forward. His heart was pounding in his chest as he slowly closed the distance between them. "Emma," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. She didn't hesitate. With tears in her eyes, she stepped forward as well, meeting him halfway. Their hands hovered just inches apart. "Nathan," she said softly, the words barely escaping her lips, and in that moment the world felt like it had paused, waiting for them to bridge the gap that had kept them apart for so long. As their hands touched, there was a brief, electric surge, but nothing happened. They stared at each other in disbelief, unsure whether to feel joy or fear. "Is it Really gone? Emma asked, her voice trembling with hope. Nathan held her gaze, his eyes softening. I think so, he whispered. Slowly he pulled her closer, and for the first time in what felt like forever, they were no longer separated by an invisible force. The distance between them had finally vanished, and the world seemed to hold its breath, allowing them to share this moment of pure connection. For a few moments, they stood there, wrapped in each other's presence, overwhelmed by the sensation of finally being together again. Emma let out a soft laugh, a sound that felt foreign after so much time apart. I can't believe it, she murmured, her voice full of awe. Nathan smiled, brushing a lock of hair from her face. I told you we'd find a way, he said gently. Together, we can face anything. With a quiet sigh, Emma leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his embrace. For the first time in ages, she felt whole again. As the days passed, life slowly returned to a new sense of normal. Nathan and Emma were finally able to live without the constant fear of the barrier. They took long walks together, laughing and talking about everything they had missed. One evening, as they sat under the stars, Emma looked up at the sky. It's strange, she said softly. I thought I would never get to experience something like this again. Nathan squeezed her hand, his voice full of warmth. We've got all the time in the world now, he said, gazing at her with a look of deep affection. And I'll spend it all with you. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through the quiet streets, Nathan stopped suddenly. I've been thinking, he said, his voice serious. What happens if something like this happens again? What if we're separated again? Emma looked at him, her heart tightening. She took a deep breath, then smiled softly. We'll face it, Nathan, she said firmly. We'll face it together, no matter what. We've already proven that nothing can tear us apart. Nathan nodded, his eyes filled with love and certainty. I won't let anything separate us again. As the weeks passed, Nathan and Emma built a life together, one they had almost given up on. They worked together, explored new places, and rediscovered what it meant to truly live. But there were still moments, late at night, when they would lie awake, the silence between them filled with unspoken fears. Emma would reach for Nathan's hand, seeking the reassurance that, no matter what, they had each other. And in those moments, Nathan would squeeze her hand tightly, whispering, no matter what happens, we're always together. One day, as they sat together in a small park, Emma turned to Nathan with a question that had been weighing on her mind. Do you ever think about the past before all of this? Nathan paused, looking thoughtful. I do, he admitted, but then I think about how much we've been through together, and I wouldn't change a thing. Emma smiled softly, her heart swelling with affection. Me neither, she said quietly. Because without all of that, we wouldn't be who we are now. As the seasons changed, so did their relationship. The fear that once gripped them, the constant reminder of the barrier, faded into the background of their lives. But there were times when Emma would catch herself glancing nervously at Nathan, wondering if something could happen again. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset, Nathan squeezed her hand and looked at her with a reassuring smile. You don't have to worry anymore, he said gently. We've made it through the worst. Now it's just us. Months passed, and Nathan and Emma had truly found peace. Their love grew stronger each day, their bond unbreakable. One quiet evening, as they sat in their living room, Emma looked at Nathan with a playful smile. "You know," she said, "I think we're finally getting the hang of this." Nathan raised an eyebrow, teasing her. "Getting the hang of what?" he asked. "Of life," Emma replied, her smile widening. "No more barriers, no more limits, just us." Nathan grinned, pulling her into a tight embrace. "I couldn't agree more." As their journey together continued, Nathan and Emma made a pact to never let the past control them again. They lived each day with intention, making the most of every moment. One evening, while they were out walking through the city, Nathan stopped in front of a small cafe. "How about we celebrate this?" he said, his voice filled with a playful excitement. Emma smiled, her heart swelling with happiness. "Celebrate what?" she asked. Nathan took her hand and pulled her toward the door. "Us," he said simply, "and the life we've built together." Inside the cafe, the soft hum of conversation and the clinking of coffee cups filled the air. Nathan and Emma sat at a corner table, their eyes only for each other. "To us," Nathan said, raising his glass. Emma smiled, clinking her glass against his. "To us," she repeated softly. As they shared a quiet laugh, Emma reached across the table and took his hand. "I can't believe we made it," she said, her voice filled with awe. Nathan squeezed her hand gently. "I can, because we're together." As the night wore on, the world outside seemed to fade away, leaving only Nathan and Emma in their little bubble of happiness. They talked about their future, their dreams, and the life they would build together. "What do you see when you look ahead?" Emma asked, her voice soft. Nathan thought for a moment, then smiled. "I see us," he said, "growing old together, laughing at the small things, and facing whatever comes our way." Emma's heart swelled at his words. "I can't imagine anything better." Over the next few weeks, Nathan and Emma's life felt like a dream. The world seemed to have softened around them, and every moment together felt like a treasure. One afternoon, as they walked through a park, hand in hand, Emma paused to look at a flower blooming nearby. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice filled with wonder. Nathan smiled, stopping beside her. "Like you," he said softly, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. Emma laughed, blushing slightly. "You always know how to make me smile." One quiet evening, as they sat on their porch watching the stars, Emma turned to Nathan with a question that had been lingering in her mind. "Do you ever worry about what comes next?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan looked at her, his gaze steady and calm. "I used to," he admitted, "but now I don't worry about the future because I know we'll face it together. No matter what comes, we have each other." Emma smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "That's all I need." The days that followed were filled with simple, joyful moments. Nathan and Emma spent their time exploring new places, trying new things, and cherishing every second together. One day, while they were hiking up a mountain trail, Emma turned to Nathan, breathless from the climb. "Do you think we'll ever stop exploring?" she asked, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Nathan smiled, looking out at the view. "I hope not," he replied. "The world is too big, and I want to see it all with you." As they made their way back down the mountain, the conversation turned to dreams for the future. "I used to think about all the things I wanted to do, but now all I can think about is what we can do together," Emma said, her voice soft with sincerity. Nathan looked at her, his expression filled with love and understanding. "Everything I've done up until now has led to this," he said quietly, "to us right here, and I wouldn't change a thing." Back at home, the pace of life returned to its usual rhythm. They spent their evenings in quiet comfort, cooking together, talking about their day, and just enjoying each other's presence. One night, as they sat together on the couch, Emma turned to Nathan with a playful grin. "What would you do if I wasn't here?" she asked. Nathan looked at her, a mischievous spark in his eyes. "I'd be lost without you," he replied, his voice warm with affection. "So don't ever go anywhere." The next morning, Emma woke up early to find Nathan already in the kitchen making coffee. As she walked in, she smiled at the sight of him. "You're always up before me," she teased. Nathan chuckled, turning to face her with a warm smile. "I like starting the day with you," he said, handing her a cup of coffee. "It's the best part of my morning." Emma took the cup, her heart swelling with affection. "You're perfect," she whispered, leaning in to kiss him gently. As they sat down to breakfast, the conversation turned to their future again. Emma, with a hint of hesitation, asked, "Do you ever think about where we'll be in 5 years?" Nathan looked at her thoughtfully, then shrugged with a smile. "I don't need to know exactly," he said. "As long as we're together, I know it'll be perfect." "What about you?" Emma's eyes softened, her voice full of certainty. "I feel the same way. Wherever we are, as long as it's with you." As the months passed, Nathan and Emma's relationship continued to grow. Every day felt like a new adventure, a new chapter in their love story. One evening, while they were sitting on the rooftop watching the city lights twinkle below, Emma asked, "Do you ever think about the beginning, how we almost lost everything?" Nathan gazed out at the view, his voice soft. "I do," he admitted, "but it made us stronger, and it made me realize how much I need you." Emma's heart swelled with emotion, and she leaned her head on his shoulder. "I need you too." One day, while walking through the park, they came across an old couple sitting on a bench holding hands and smiling at each other. Emma stopped, watching them for a moment. "Do you think we'll be like them when we're older?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity. Nathan smiled softly, his eyes meeting hers. "I hope so," he said, his voice full of affection. "I want to grow old with you, laugh at the same jokes, and love each other more every day." Emma's eyes glistened with emotion. "That's exactly what I want." Later that night, as they lay in bed, Nathan turned to Emma, his face serious. "Do you ever think about what we'll do if something happens, if we can't be together?" Emma's heart skipped a beat, and she took his hand in hers. "I don't want to think about that," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "But if it ever comes to that, we'll figure it out. We've faced so much already, and we'll keep going together." Nathan kissed her forehead gently, his voice reassuring. "I'll always find a way back to you." The following day, as they sat in the park, Emma noticed Nathan staring into the distance, his expression thoughtful. "What's on your mind?" she asked, her voice gentle. Nathan shook his head slightly, as if coming out of a trance. "I was just thinking about how much I've changed since we met," he admitted. "I used to be so focused on everything but what really matters. Now, all I want is you." "You've made me realize what's important," Emma smiled softly, reaching for his hand. "And you've made me realize the same thing." Weeks later, the day came when they were faced with a decision. The technology that had placed the chips inside them was offering a solution, a way to remove the chips and live a normal life, but at a price. Nathan and Emma stood together, facing the choice. Emma looked at Nathan, her eyes searching his face. "What do you think?" she asked softly. Nathan took her hands in his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I think we've come this far together. I want to keep going with or without them as long as it's with you." After much discussion, they made their choice. They didn't need the chips to prove their love. Their bond was stronger than any technology, any barriers. They decided to live their lives side by side with the world watching. As they walked out of the facility, hand in hand, Emma looked at Nathan, a smile playing on her lips. "We're going to be okay, right?" she asked. Nathan squeezed her hand, his eyes filled with certainty. "We've already been through everything. We can handle anything as long as we're together." As the days went on, Nathan and Emma began to rebuild their lives. They spent time with friends, traveled, and pursued their passions. But even as they embraced their freedom, the shadow of the chips loomed over them. One evening, as they sat on the couch, Emma turned to Nathan with a serious expression. "Do you ever wonder if we'll always feel this different? Like we're constantly fighting against something we can't control?" Nathan looked at her, his gaze unwavering. "No," he replied firmly, "we're not fighting against anything. We're choosing to live together." Weeks passed, and their lives started to feel more like normal. But the sense of being watched never quite left them. On a quiet afternoon, as they walked through a crowded city street, Emma leaned in close to Nathan. "Do you ever feel like people are staring at us?" she asked softly. Nathan glanced around, his eyes scanning the crowd. "I do," he said. "But I don't care. We've been through so much and we're still here. We're still together. That's all that matters." Emma smiled, feeling a wave of reassurance. "You're right. As long as we're together, nothing else matters." One evening, as they sat together under the stars, Nathan turned to Emma, his voice filled with emotion. "You know, sometimes I still can't believe how lucky I am. I thought I'd lost everything, but then I found you. I found us." Emma smiled, her heart full. "I feel the same way," she said softly. "Before you, I never knew what it meant to truly love someone, to feel like this. You've given me a new life, Nathan." Nathan pulled her into a gentle embrace. "And I'll keep giving you everything I have, forever." As time went on, the memory of the chips slowly faded, replaced by the life they were building together. One day, while walking through the park, Emma stopped and looked up at Nathan with a mischievous smile. "What if we could take one last chance, one last moment where nothing holds us back?" Nathan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Emma's voice was full of excitement. "Let's break all the rules just for a day. Let's live like we never had the chips. No barriers, no fears, just us, living fully." Nathan's eyes sparkled with a hint of rebellion. "I like the sound of that." And so they did. For one perfect day, Nathan and Emma threw caution to the wind. They ran through the streets, laughed under the rain, and spent the day embracing life without any restrictions. As the sun began to set, they stood on a hill overlooking the city that had once felt so distant, now feeling like their world. Emma turned to Nathan, her eyes filled with happiness. "This is it, Nathan. This is our forever." Nathan kissed her gently, his voice full of promise. "This is just the beginning,"